for joining us today with SDI TV. Today we're going to be changing the bladder cap out here on a particularly, we're going to install this on the 2017 CRF450. So our SDI bladder cap here, what it does is increase the volume, so it gives it a little bit more of a linear feel. It really helps out with the bottom out harshness and farther in the stroke of the shock, as well as it's going to keep the shock a little bit cooler. We have that little bit more nitrogen in there, as well as it gives you that real nice factory anodized aluminum piece, as well as we have a workable Schrader valve that we can work with as well. With our shock firmly inside the vise now, what we're going to do is we really want to clean up around the bladder cap itself, because we're going to pull the bladder cap off, so we want to make sure that we don't get any grind or grit down inside of the shock itself. So just use a little parts cleaner. So we're going to run around the edge of the shock. This is a new shock, so it's actually not real dirty, but just keep that real clean inside there. Again, when we pull that, we want to make sure that we don't get any debris that falls down in there. And then we're going to release the nitrogen, as well as we're going to actually go ahead and take the inner Schrader valve out of the shock itself. So just go ahead and depress and let the nitrogen out of the shock. Now with no nitrogen and the Schrader valve actually removed in here, we're actually going to just try to press down a little bit on the actual bladder cap itself. And you'll see it actually will sink down a little bit on there. That's going to give us enough room to be able to get a pick inside of the actual shock itself. From there we can work the pick out. And again, you probably want to run around and clean that inner shock up a little bit more before we actually pull the bladder cap out. As you notice, a lot of the Showa shocks, the factory bladder caps are very flush. It makes it a little harder to pull out. We actually got a bladder cap removal tool that we're going to use here. Some of the KYBs they're extended, so it's a little easier to pull it out. This tool is available through SDI, as well as you can get it through your local shop. Once we have the tool on, just go ahead and work it back up. Just ease with it so you don't overflow with the oil. With the stock bladder and cap out of the shock now, you want to just be able to clean the stock bladder down, inspect it, make sure that there's nothing wrong with the bladder. After you wipe that down, you can actually just go ahead and pinch the bladder, and you can actually get the bladder cap will normally just pop right out. Now with the SDI bladder cap here, you can actually see the volume size difference between the two, and that's what you're going to really notice the difference out of. I'm going to go ahead and just pop that back on. Again, just give that a clean wipe down. And we're going to fill the shock back up with oil a little bit. You don't need to worry about too much of the oil level itself, because when we put the bladder and the bladder cap back in, it's going to overflow and purge out that oil. Now after we fill the shock back up with oil, we're going to go ahead and just insert the bladder cap back in. And like I said, we're going to overfill it a little bit and just smudge that back down in. And we're just going to compress that back down to be able to get the circlip back into it. Now with the bladder and the bladder cap back installed, we're going to install the Schrader valve. The Schrader valve has a little O-ring on it. We're just going to run a little bit of our SDI slick grease right on that edge of that O-ring when we install. And this uses a 10mm socket that we're going to just snug down till it's tight. Now that we got the cap and the Schrader valve installed, now we're ready to be able to fill this back up. On this 2017, our PSI level is 142 PSI for this shock, so we're going to use our SDI low loss gauge here to be able to fill this up. Now that we got that set down to the 142 PSI, let's just wipe the shock down. and we're ready to install. Now that we got the nitrogen filled and the bladder cap installed, we can actually reinstall this back onto the bike, test this out. Again, if you have any questions, any concerns, you can always give us a call, and always check back with SDI TV for new videos.